Hello, hooligans! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey Marie, and I'm your resident mother of God. Shut up. Okay, let's try this one more time. Hello, hooligans! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey Marie, and I'm your resident graffiti artist / attorney. And today, we're going to be talking about how street art can be a form of resistance. I just want to say thank you to all my subscribers who subscribe to my channel, which seeks to inspire professionals to live unconventional lives full of color. I really need to find a shorter motto to tell people about graffiti. Predominantly consists of graffiti and Jesus and some shots of my dog. I'll work on it. How can street art be a form of resistance? Let's start with the fact that most of us have come into contact with a social media platform that has censored some things that we've shared. I mean, I'm not ragging on YouTube or anything, but even YouTube has their guidelines as to what you can say and what you can't say. Please don't give me the boot. I was just telling people about guidelines. That's all I was doing. The issue becomes the platform is someone else's and they are thereby representing sort of what you're saying on their platform. But on the flip side, you should be able to speak freely and share freely what your thoughts are about how Beyond Burgers are not really burgers. How chiggers are a thing in the South, even though I grew up in the South and I've never even seen a chigger. How the spoon in your McFlurry is not a straw, it's a spoon. But every single one of us has looked at that thing and thought, well, there's a hole in it for a reason, and then tried to act as if it were a straw only to realize it's nothing but a spoon. So it's this tug of war, and the same thing happens with graffiti. It's someone else's wall, but it's your graffiti and your artwork that could potentially be politically incorrect, impolite, vulgar. There's a lot of graffiti around the world that hasn't been painted over, and actually there are graffiti artists who have made quite the names for themselves by doing just that. Banksy, for example, is the poster child of graffiti where this poor little kid is eating ash or a woman is hugging a bomb. He is using graffiti as a form of resisting the status quo of environmental pollution, of resisting the status quo. Oh, well, you have nuclear bombs? Well, so do we. Well, then let's just hug our bombs. I actually found a quote from him that is quite fascinating. Sorry, there was something in my lipstick. He describes graffiti and street art as a form of underclass revenge that grants an individual the ability to take the power back from the privileged, as for generations, real art was something only accessible to the elite. It's a form of the underclass taking a stand against the status quo and actually sparking societal change. When you hear the word resistance or graffiti as resistance, it's not really a bad thing. If passersby see it and they think about society and they think about how it needs to change, and then they also think, well, who's to blame for this society? Me. So my question is, what would happen if it's a commissioned piece of artwork? Would that get destroyed? Well, actually, there's a really fascinating story about that. In 1933, Nelson Rockefeller, he commissioned Diego Rivera to paint a mural on his building where it would be in the lobby of the building and it would inspire hope for the future and a vision. All these wonderful, grandiose thingamajiggers. Now, here's the issue. Rivera was a communist. Here we have Rockefeller, who is the pride and joy of capitalism. And then you've got Rivera, who's the artist and he's the communist. He didn't really see anything wrong with just slipping in Vladimir Lenin in the mural. Just kind of backdoored him in there. You know what I mean? To use a Big Brother term. And so Rockefeller, when he sees Lenin in there, he's like, who is this communist bald guy? Clearly, he was kind of pissed about that. So he writes a letter and he's like, hey man, the bald guy that you slipped in there? Yeah, I don't really think that my guests are really gonna like that too much. I mean, just a hunch. So can you just kind of scribble on his face and put somebody else's face on there, like your grandma or maybe your dog? And Rivera was like, no. It was a whole big fiasco because there were actually protests. And the artists were saying, no, that's his artistic freedom to put Lenin in there. And then Rockefeller was like, yeah, but like he's a communist. Moral of the story, it got painted over by another artist. Even in the 1930s, we had a struggle between artistic expression and censorship. So if you swing it back to graffiti, graffiti is this art form that is art against art. It is resistance of the status quo. It's about being that voice, that tiny little voice in the wilderness that's saying something different than what we hear over and over and over again in our society. It's just breaking from the mainstream. I have a slight love affair with the Dada movement. I think it mirrors graffiti in a whole bunch of ways. So the Dada movement of art was no rules, art against art, nonsensical. In the middle of World War I, everything was going crazy. There was brutality on every side. It was a horrible time to live in. And so these artists and poets from Switzerland were like, well, if they ain't abiding by any rules, why do we gotta abide by any rules? They started deconstructing art. Graffiti and Dada are both resistance type art forms. But graffiti actually has more rules than Dada. The poster child for the Dada movement was Marcel Duchamp. And he had a masterpiece called Fountain. And here it is. Yeah, it ain't no darn fountain, it's a straight up urinal. Wow! Hear me out. You see a urinal in a museum. What? That's the first thing you think. And then your mind ultimately goes to, what world are we living in where art is a urinal? Ha ha! Okay, we're getting somewhere. What world are we living in? Can you venture to answer that question? You'll come up with, well, we've got a world that believes that fear-mongering is the best way to get anybody to do anything. We need to be working 24/7 in order to make 2 cents to rub together, and we don't have time for family. We don't really worry about rules about like morality and truth. So we're living in this world that is kind of the same as the Dada era. Resistance artwork, and I guess I just made that up, like Dada and like graffiti, it takes a stab at you. And it makes you kind of stand back and look at the world the way it is and say, well, darn, what's wrong with it? Well, it's because people act out their evil intent and they do whatever is right in their own eyes. And so it calls you to ask, well, how can I change this? Maybe we should live on faith, hope, and love. Y'all are probably gonna think I'm crazy, which I am. I know I went from a urinal in a museum to graffiti, to faith, hope, and love. But to answer the question, how can street art be a type of resistance art? It can resist all of these horrible things that are going on in this world right now and instead be a beacon of light for faith, hope, and love. So YouTube guidelines, didn't think that was too bad, did you? You thought I was gonna be like, oh yeah, like resisting authority. Let's resist fear and let's resist hatred, and let's resist brutality, and let's resist violence. And through art, let's spread a message of hope, love, faith, peace, and beauty. Even if you have to drag a urinal in a museum to get it done, hey, I'm all for it. Like, subscribe, comment, don't subscribe, don't comment, be true to yourself. Later.